Welcome to the Grand Shorts, a part of the Grand Podcast. The Grand. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grand. The Grand is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. First, a small request. I have become independent and I'm now building up my podcast company. Therefore, I'm right now looking for proposals and projects that could be interested in attaching my podcast to the communication and dissemination activities. Go to my website, thegrand.eu, and send me a message if you want to hear more about how to work together with the Grand. Now, the episode. All my episodes the last 3 years that digs into idea development are very popular. And for a while, I have been wondering how I could develop new content within this area. And here it is. Together with Ana-Marija Špicnagel, that some of you might remember from earlier episodes, I have developed an audible idea development workshop. We have simply taken a concrete Real Horizon Europe call text and then broken it down into 3 episodes. Analyzing the call text, presenting the canvas model that Anna is applying, and finally shaping a concrete example of a core project idea. All of this to offer inspiration and to give a peek into how this process can be carried out. First up, call text analysis, where we run through the call on soil and healthy cropping. And here an important tip for most added value by listening to this episode. Click the link in the episode resume in your podcast host and go to the website of this episode. Here I have a link to the call text, and here I have uploaded Anna's presentation and other information so you can better follow what we discuss in these 3 episodes. Please enjoy! The Grand. Welcome to The Grand, the EU funding podcast. Now, today we're going to have an experiment. Looking forward to this. This is part of my shorts format. And when you're a podcaster, and when you've been running for more than 3 years than I have, sometimes you need to try something new. Sometimes you need to kick a little bit to the pile of leaves, as I call it, for something else to happen. And before we share what we're going to do here today, welcome Ana-Marija. Do you want the full? Because just call you Anna.
Hi, Niels.
And welcome
Thanks
back,
for inviting me.
Of course, and welcome back, because it was we did a wonderful episode a while ago, and of course, I had to have you back because you are a strong guest on on many things, but especially also what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to run an idea development workshop, you and me together. Audible workshop. And that's a big challenge. We've been working on this for a while in each and our end, and we will try to. Of course, the purpose is for you out there to get some tools, to get some inspiration on how you can attack a call text. Yeah? And we will have 3 episodes. It'll be short episodes. Try to keep it within 30 minutes. And simply, we will attack a Horizon call text. And no, we're not going to attack an open call text because that would be unfair. So we're going to attack an old call text. So that's for the case of the example. And then that's the first episode. We will analyze the call. Second episode, we will run through your model, Anna. The way you attack these things, your thought of a theoretical tool or framework that you use, and then finally, in the third episode, we will run that model on the call text. So you can see these 3 episodes in one context. and in a coherent context. And we will try to share a lot of information on the website. So we will share PowerPoint presentation, we will share call text, whatever. So we will do our best for you to be able to go in there and dig into, because we know many of you are listening on the way to work or whatever. Of course, you cannot sit there and look at things. But if this is of strong importance for you, big importance for you, then you can go in and dig a little further into what we have been working with at the same time as listening to what we do. No, I've been talking a lot now.
Well, I know you like to talk a lot, so. But I like to talk a lot as well. So that's why we have 3 episodes.
And we promised each other we would be good together here to do our best to be short. But also we would do our best to for this, to show things audibly, because we cannot. It's a sound, and so we can't show you on the screen what we're talking about. But we will. That's why we will put information on the website. No. Anna, which call are we going to talk about?
Yes, so Niels, once again, thanks for inviting me. And maybe just a small remark for people that are listening to us. Niels mentioned that it will be audible, but actually we will try to communicate in this podcast in a way that is user-friendly, so that you can envisage actually all the things that we are talking about. So fingers crossed.
Just 1 second, I forgot. Shortly introduce yourself for listeners who just...
Yes. Okay, so my name is Ana-Marija Špicnagel. I'm the director and project coordinator at IPS Konzalting. We are a Croatian-Belgian consultancy company. And what we do is actually 2 things in the Horizon projects. Besides the project writing, we also develop business models and business plans for the projects and for the exploitation of project results, because you know how they say, if the product or the service cannot find the market, sooner or later it will die. So that's why we are here, to make sure that it does reach the market. On the other side, my personal and professional passion is also communication, and trying to transfer the knowledge and also the messages about the project and from the project results to the greater audience and to the stakeholders of all sorts. So we are dealing primarily with these aspects, and we are also participating actively in the development of project proposals. So I think that's one of the reasons why Niels also invited me today here.
Yeah, sure. You're a strong consultant, and that's why.
Yes, well, we are working, we have actually a network of more than 130 institutions and organizations across Europe. I would say in all EU countries, we have at least 1 or 2 partners, plus the partners from Argentina, Chile, and these kind of countries. And we have been developing multiple proposals, especially with the universities from Spain and universities from Belgium. So I would say that we did manage to get some experience through the years.
Hello, I'm Chiara Ligori, and I am so happy that I've joined this networking event. I invite you all to listen to the Grant podcast.
Yeah, you mentioned about the call.
Yeah, let's have a look at it, and everybody who knows about the Horizon calls know that it can be 2 to 4 pages long, right? So we will do our best to sort of zoom in and give you the most important information so you can follow it. So Anna.
My expertise is more in the direction of the agricultural projects and bio-based technologies. So the call that we are introducing here and today is Horizon Miss 2024 Soil 0106. Niels will also indicate the link of this call so that you can check it in details if you're interested. Yeah. But it's actually about harnessing the multifunctional potential of soil biodiversity. In other words, we are investigating the topic of soil and how to make sure that the quality of European soils is in good condition for the upcoming generations. And actually, yeah, that's true, because when we have a call or any Horizon calls, you could see that it's like 3 or 4 pages long, and it has a lot of different information stated. And sometimes it can be very overwhelming. You are not sure whether you are addressing the right subjects, what needs to be taken into account, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. So maybe I can just briefly go through the call. Yeah, so first of all, what I like to see from the financial point is actually just to check how big is the budget of the project that can go per each of the project, and whether it's just one project that gets financed or more projects. Why is this important? Because we know that there are, let's say, some clusters or consortiums that have been already working together and that might apply again to the similar subject. So from that point, it's good to know if you are already losing in start, if it's only one project needs to be financed, or if there is an opportunity that several projects and let's say clusters of partners can get approved. Concretely, in this case, the project was about 8 million of a budget, and the whole topic could actually give a budget to 2 projects, meaning that we could actually have a competitive market. And this is innovation action. So the type of action is also very important, because it can be research and innovation, it can be CSA, it can be innovation action, and so on and so on. Each of these have also different types of co-financing, especially for the legal entities of SMEs. So for research institutes and for NGOs, in majority of Horizon projects, it's 100% financed. But if we are talking about SMEs partners, then it can be also 70% financed, which also makes a difference for partners who participate. In this one, it was concretely this case of 70% financing. And then also, for example, there is a kind of, let's say, additional information that we could also grant third parties, which is also interesting, because sometimes you have calls where this is not an applicable option, or it can be with only limited budget. So if you are planning to develop something with a smaller number of partners in the core consortium, but with external partners in terms of third parties, then you need to know with how much budget you can actually rely on. So that's why this is very, very important. And then when we know this kind of, let's say, general information, of course, we need to make sure that we understand the context of the whole call, the expected outcomes, and the project activities. For example, for the expected outcomes, over here, they indicate a couple of different actions on the EU level. For example, farm to fork strategy, the EU Biodiversity Strategy, and so on and so on.
So here it's always like this, the expected outcome, it's sort of setting the scene. What context are we talking about? What documents, policy documents, whatever, other white paper screens, whatever, are we action plans? Are we referring to here as a background for this call and should be seen in that context, yeah?
Yes. I mean, this is the preliminary step, that you have to make the research, because at certain point in different legal frameworks or different strategies, they wanted to tackle different elements. And with this project, you actually have to find a common ground between these different strategies, even if it's completely contradictory. But just to understand the context within each, they are actually trying to get the new results and improve the subject. And another thing why it's also very important is because you need to find the partners that also have specific experiences that are connected with these kind of strategies or action plans. It can refer to the previous projects that they have been dealing with, or with the experience of the consortium members, or the different organizations in which they are also participating. So it's different elements. But for example, just as an example, if they want to tackle the sustainable development goals, then you need to understand that throughout the project proposal, you actually have to deal with this kind of SDGs in multiple levels. You will not just mention it once in a text, but you will actually try to see how your actions are dealing with these specific SDGs or any other strategy that they indicate.
This is complex.
Of course.
They hand out 8 million euros. It's a big project when it comes to this corner, agriculture, so on and so on. So it's a lot of money. And you can see it in the core text already when you start reading here the first paragraph of expected outcome, where they refer to the context and the tie-ins. There's a lot of things you need to make sure that you are on top of.
Yeah. I mean, we are talking
Mission,
about
soil, biodiversity strategy, farm to fork, pesticides, CAP, future nature restoration law, and so on and so forth. There are many things that you can not just say, there's a reason why they put them. Yeah.
Of course, but I would say that if we really want that the Europe is on top of the research, then we'll work with people who have experience and who are not starting from zero, but that also have already some experiences from different sectors and are able to actually give the added value to the project, but also to the Horizon Framework Program. And I don't think it's for nothing that they say that Horizon is the leading research program in Europe. So that's why also the complexity is connected. And there is quite a lot of competition, actually, when we are talking about Horizon. I have been working with them for the past 13 years, but you could see from year to year that it's becoming even more competition, and it's even more difficult to get the project funded.
All right, let's move into the actual expected outcomes.
Yeah. So once we know the setup within which they tackle the topic, we focus on the project results that are expected. And over here, normally they mention between 5 and even 7 different project results. For example, in this one, they say specifically, we want to focus the results around the soil and crop health, that we have effective plant-soil interactions, exploiting the potential, that we have a better knowledge of the relationship of different factors, the availability of integrated pest management practices, etc., etc. So the first thing that we mentioned is very theoretical. So in this strategy, in this action plan, we want to focus on this or that. In these project results, it's becoming more concrete, because the topic of soil or any topic you can tackle from so many different angles. But here they mention the keywords, I would say, which they want to address, like the knowledge, like the tools, the practices, and so on and so on. And what they also mention is, for example, there is a need to develop, test, and deploy management practices, which is a very crucial element because it gives us an introduction to the fact that the project itself cannot be only a theoretical project that is done in the lab, on the lab level, or only on the level of the research on paper. So it needs to be really put in the practice on the field.
Go out to that field.
Yeah. You have to go in your boots to the field and actually do the work.
And here in this part of the call text, you always need to take it. You need to look at the small words here. So you need to look. So you always have the starting line before you have the bullets, and there you have to read that line and make sure you're like what does it say? So project results are expected. That means this is what you're supposed to do, to contribute to all of the following outcomes. Sometimes you will have call text where they say are expected to, I don't remember the exact wording, but where you have a list, but they don't expect all of them to be covered. Yeah, but here
that's
it
also
is
possible.
clear. Here it is clear that you have to that you have bullets and everything have to be addressed.
Yeah. There is no compromise. Like when you want your kid to go to the bed, there is no compromise. They need to go to bed. Yeah. But the thing is also that's true. Sometimes it can be very punctual, and in other words, they will also give you the obligatory part and non-obligatory part. But what is really interesting, through the experience of a decade, actually, I have always been reading this text once we start preparing the proposal, at least every 2 weeks. So we are developing the proposal of, for example, for 3 months. Every 2 weeks, I will stop, I will read it again, and then I will see if we are going in the good direction or not.
Yeah, and it is.
Yeah, especially when you're developing the project consortium, you can get in a position where you are so much stressed about coordination, about the management of partners, about the administrative forms, that you are maybe not seeing the whole picture. So it's very important to see if we are on a good line.
Yeah. All right. The work programs for 26-27 have been announced, and in the coming months, the broker session is on. If you want to give the communication and dissemination plan a nice twist in your proposal, reach out to me to get an idea of the possibilities in developing a project podcast. The grant, more than a podcast. So that was the project results. So next step here.
Yes, so the next step is the proposed activities. So we know what the result should be, but then how the activities should be organized. And you remember the sentence that I mentioned to you earlier, that we need to develop, test, and deploy management practices. And over here, they actually give us even more information. So they want us to develop and test site-specific innovations. Tools, set up demonstration sites, so it's the same boots from the story before, to assess social, economic, and environmental issues, also organize trainings, knowledge sharing activities, peer-to-peer learning. So it's a lot of different things, but they are actually, if you read it thoroughly, it's giving you all the necessary information that you need to write the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are some additional elements, like you need to focus on this or that type of crops, or do it in different pedoclimatic conditions, and so on and so on.
And again, it's the small words you need to focus on. So you have here, so this is part, this is of course, this is part of the scope part of the core text, where there's a funnel, so to say. The scope starts with a paragraph, sort of what problem are we looking at here, and then it ends with what we're talking about now, the proposed activities to handle that issue that has been outlined in the paragraph above. And here, it's very, you have just before in this call text, but just before you have the proposed activities listed, you have a small paragraph where you have words you need to pay a lot of attention to. So there's a need to develop, test, and deploy management practices by enhancing soil health will facilitate, for instance, the management of soil-borne pests. You need to these words. You need to look at where the stress lies. If you have a word like need in a text, in a call text, this is something that you need to pay a lot of attention to. And then you have the activities listed here, and that's a should there. Proposed activities should. Yeah. So there's no compromise. Go to bed.
Do the proposal.
No, but it's all these little connecting words. All these. It's very important because it indicates what you have to do.
Yeah, that's true. And especially because sometimes you want to, or you have a consortium that is capable of doing some elements, but maybe not all of the elements. So you're trying to avoid these kind of proposed activities on the level of, we have a very experienced consortium. but it's never working, And another thing that is very important is the methodology or the terminology that they are using. Because, for example, if they are saying that it's demonstration sites, then we will not propose the living labs, because it has a completely different context, even on the EU level, what is demo site and what is the living lab. So you really have to focus on what they are searching for.
Yeah, and Anna, you know
Yes.
just as well as I that you have and I have worked with research partners throughout the years, where you would have a research institute, and they say, they're writing this, but can we do the thing that we are doing here in our? We have developed this concept, and that's not. You will have partners that will try to diminish or try to, can't you read it like this? So sort of fitting their own approach into it. And there's again, no compromise, go to bed. No, it has to be like this. Then you will have to look at what you do and see that's what you get money for.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to do that, or we need to talk to another research institute. No, we can do. So it's just it's very.
I have to say, very good experiences. Yeah, but I think it's very important that you have a good coordinator, very strong coordinator, who can communicate well with partners. Sometimes you have to be harsh, but at the end of the day, you are trying just to communicate about the importance of the call and the whole consortium level. And another thing is you have to have a good consultant, because many of the Horizon proposals nowadays are being done by the consultants, sometimes also external consultants. Mm-hmm. And from that point, it's important that you have someone who will say openly, sorry, we are not putting it inside. It's impossible to connect it. But only after you actually see whether it's possible or not possible to include it, because sometimes it's also, let's say, a kind of game of words, how to introduce something and how to connect it, how to make the connection between the methodology that you're using and the context that they have at this moment. So good communication and coordination is essential for this.
Yeah, well, and so if we move dig a little bit into the text again, Anna, is there anything else in this corner? There's always an end to the texts that sort of you need to pay attention.
Yes, so you should actually focus on the whole text. There is not more or less important parts of the text. It's just the whole text that you have to read thoroughly a couple of times throughout the proposal writing time. At the end, normally they also indicate about the different Horizon projects that have been already funded, or the different Horizon clusters, or activities that have been already performed. And from my point of view, it's very important, and it's of course necessary, because no one is expecting you to develop something from scratch, but to actually use the results of the previously funded projects and to build upon these results.
What I noticed in this text, from my experience anyways, it's an ambitious call.
Mm-hmm.
So you have here, because one thing is that you have what the listed proposed activities, but then you have a further couple of paragraphs. Proposed should focus on arable crops, should carry it out in various pedoclimatic zones, benefit both for the conventional and the organic farming. So you have further considerations in this corner. Agroecological approaches should be capitalized and given due attention. So here we also have a business element in. Mm-hmm. Then you have a paragraph here that, of course, you have this multi-actor approach. That's classic for Horizon Europe, right? And then you have the list of organizations that is supposed to join. But then you have an additional sentence on that, which complicates even further your proposal, because the beneficiaries may provide financial support to third parties to implement activities in the demonstration sites and encourage end-user management. So here you even have they say may, but when they have put the text in, put a sentence in there, it's because they would like to see proposals that hand out money locally. Yeah. So which complicates further your the structure of the proposal. Now we'll get back to that in a couple of episodes. All right. I just wanted to stress the complexity of this call. So sorry. So the end of the call text and.
Yeah, it's just about indicating the different projects that have been already funded. It's about different, for example, Joint Research Center, the EU Soil Observatory, or Knowledge Center for Biodiversity, and so on and so on. And something that has been completely, I would say, weird 5 or 7 years ago, that you're working on your Horizon project and you have your consortium and you are producing your database and knowledge. Now it's not the case anymore. You are in obligation actually to connect with the sister projects that is funded at the same call or similar calls. You have to continuously communicate with them. You have to exchange the knowledge in a even greater level. You have to connect with the services, with the different clusters that are funded by the European Commission, which are working on the same topic, which in my personal opinion is something that is really a multi-actor approach, because then you can not only focus on the research aspect, but you also have to automatically see how it can contribute to the development of the legal framework, or also to the implementation of these innovations in the real sector. So it's about the exploitation of the project results. And this is the most challenging part, because you're working with, for example, researchers or technologists or a farmer, but the research that they are doing, they don't perceive it always for the exploitation. I'm producing some research, I'm doing some lab analysis, but how could I put it on the market? Who would be interested? What is really there? So that's also a very tricky part. And that's why the exploitation aspect, the plan for the exploitation strategy, is always part of the proposals and parts of the projects. So you have to have it. It's obligatory.
No.
And that's it. If you read it all thoroughly and you follow the guidelines, you get close to the project funding.
And it's just so this is now we have tried to both dig into details, and that's because we need it for when we do the project idea development in the next episodes. But also it's good that we tried to also give you a general sort of scoping how to read this text or what to be aware of. Yeah? So let's say that's it for the first episode, and we managed to keep it around 30 minutes. Bravo. Dear listeners, I'm not going to make a full exit here. I'm just going to say looking forward to presenting the next episode for you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. As mentioned in the introduction, the site for this episode contains all the information, presentation, and documents you need to follow our idea development process in these 3 episodes. Next week, I will release the episode where Anna goes through the birdview canvas model that she is applying to the idea development process. Absolutely fantastic. You can look forward to that. The Grand.